You want to know the exact second I stopped being a victim? It was the moment my husband showed up at the diner I just reopened, drunk at 11 in the morning, screaming my name so loud the Baptists across the street canceled their prayer meeting to watch. He kicked the door so hard the glass rattled. "Jolene! You thieving little..." I didn't flinch. I just turned the griddle off and wiped my hands on my apron. "Morning, Chase. You want coffee or are you just here to embarrass yourself?" "Coffee?" He grabbed a sugar dispenser and hurled it at the wall behind me. Glass and sugar exploded everywhere. Mrs. Potts shrieked. Deputy Raines stood up from his stool. I looked at the mess. Looked back at Chase. "You're cleaning that up before you leave." "I'm not cleaning a damn thing." He charged around the counter, red-faced, fists up. "That casino creep brainwashed you. You think you can take my business, my money, my..." He swung at me. "Big mistake. See, 3 months on Vinny Stone's ranch teaches a woman a few things." I ducked, grabbed the hot coffee pot, and dumped the entire thing straight down the front of his tailored slacks. The sound he made? I can't even describe it. Part scream, part pig squeal, part gospel choir to my ears. He doubled over, clutching his scalded crotch. "You crazy? Crazy?" I knelt down, got real close, and smiled sweet as pecan pie. "Baby, I'm not crazy. I'm just no longer afraid of you. And that's way more dangerous." Deputy Raines finally decided to do his job. He grabbed Chase by the collar and yanked him backward. Chase tripped over his own feet, cracked his head on the counter, and went down like a sack of bricks. The whole diner went dead silent. Then Mrs. Potts started clapping. One old lady. Then 2 truckers. Then the whole counter. Applauding. I poured myself a fresh cup of coffee, stepped over Chase's groaning body, and walked outside to wait for the ambulance. The sun felt warm on my face. I hadn't felt warm in 2 years. Chase hollered from inside, "This isn't over." I took a sip. "It was over the night you sold me, you pathetic, cufflink-straightening son of a..." The ambulance siren drowned out the rest. But let me back up. Because you need to understand what kind of man sells his pregnant wife to a mob boss over a poker table, and what kind of woman learns to throw a coffee pot like a fastball. It started on a night that reeked of whiskey and desperation. The night Chase Hamilton bet my body like a stack of chips. The night Vincent Stone walked into my life and kicked the whole rotten door down. It was a Thursday. I remember because Thursdays were meatloaf nights at the diner before we closed it down. Grandma's recipe. 3 kinds of ground meat, breadcrumbs soaked in whole milk, a glaze made from brown sugar and something sharp she'd never write down. I used to serve it with mashed potatoes so creamy they'd make a grown man weep. Now I was serving nothing. Now I was locked in the master bathroom of a house that felt more like a mausoleum, pressing a bag of frozen peas to my jaw, praying Chase would pass out before he remembered I was still breathing. He'd been drinking since noon. Some deal had gone sideways. Some investor had pulled out. Everything was always someone else's fault with Chase. Never his gambling. Never the money he'd siphoned from the business. Never the lies stacked on lies like a house of cards in a windstorm. The bathroom door rattled. I locked it just in time. His fist hit the wood 3 times, hard. "Jolene. Open this door." His voice was calm. That was the scariest part. When he screamed, I could handle it. You brace yourself, same as you do when the tornado sirens go off. But when he got quiet, when he straightened his cufflinks and spoke soft, that meant the real storm was coming. "I'm not feeling well, Chase. I'll be out in a minute." The lie tasted like chalk in my mouth. I wasn't sick. I was pregnant. 3 months along. I'd hidden the test in an old coffee can behind the expired baking soda. I'd been hiding a lot of things lately. The peas were warming against my skin. The bruise would bloom purple by morning. More drugstore concealer. More long sleeves in August. More polite lies to the checkout girl at the Piggly Wiggly who always looked at my sunglasses a beat too long. Chase had stopped knocking. I heard his footsteps retreat down the hall. Then his voice, muffled but unmistakable, on the phone. Tonight. Yeah. The usual place. Tell Stone I'm good for it this time. Stone. I knew that name. Everyone in Mercy Springs knew that name. Vincent Stone owned the Stonewall Casino out on Route 9, the one the church ladies whispered about after Sunday service. Rumor said he was connected. Rumor said his family went back 3 generations in the kind of business that didn't print receipts. Rumor said a lot of things. But in a town where the most exciting thing to happen all year was the Methodist bake sale getting shut down by the health department, rumors were currency. Chase had been gambling at Stonewall for months. I found receipts in his jacket pockets. I'd stopped asking about them. Asking questions got you a split lip and an apology the next morning, always with flowers, always with that boyish smile that used to make my knees weak back when I was 23 and too stupid to know the difference between charming and dangerous. The front door slammed. His truck roared to life. I waited until the sound faded, until the only thing I could hear was the hum of the refrigerator and my own heart beating too fast, before I unlocked the bathroom door. I checked my phone. One new message from Vinny Stone's people. Just an address. Just a time. And 3 words at the bottom, the debt is settled. I stared at those words until they blurred. The debt. What debt? What had Chase done this time? And why was Vincent Stone texting me personally? I should have run. Right then. Grabbed the coffee can with the pregnancy test, stuffed some clothes in a bag, and driven until the Texas skyline disappeared in my rearview mirror. But I didn't. Because running takes money. Running takes a plan. Running takes hope, and hope was something I'd packed away in a box labeled someday and shoved so far under the bed I'd forgotten what it looked like. So I did what I always did. I cleaned the kitchen. I wiped the counters. I waited for my husband to come home drunk or broke or both, and I braced for whatever version of him walked through the door. 3 hours later, the door didn't open. It exploded. I was in the living room, folding laundry. Towels. White ones. The kind you buy in bulk at Target because you've stopped caring about nice things. The television was on but muted, some reality show about people flipping houses. I used to dream about flipping houses. About making something beautiful out of something broken. Now I was the broken thing, and nobody was coming to fix me. The first sound was tires on gravel. Not Chase's truck. Something heavier, something that crunched the driveway like it owned it. Then footsteps. Multiple sets. Heavy boots on the front porch. Then nothing. A pause so long and so quiet that I started to convince myself I'd imagined it. Then the doorframe splintered like a toothpick. I screamed. Couldn't help it. The sound ripped out of me before my brain could catch up. I stumbled backward, tripped over the laundry basket, and hit the floor hard, towels spilling around me like white flags of surrender. A man stepped through the wreckage of my front door. Tall. Broad shoulders. Dark hair touched with gray at the temples. He wore a black work shirt with the sleeves rolled up, and his boots were the kind that cost more than my first car. Behind him, 2 more men stood silent, hands clasped in front of them like they were waiting for a bus. But it was his eyes I couldn't look away from. Gray as a winter sky. Calm. Unreadable. They swept the room once, cataloging everything, the overturned laundry basket, the muted television, the woman on the floor with one hand pressed against her belly. Vincent Stone. He didn't speak for a long moment. Just looked at me. Then his gaze shifted to the hallway behind me, and his expression didn't change, but something in the air did. The temperature dropped. The silence got heavier. You must be Jolene. His voice was quiet. Not soft. Quiet, like a rifle being cocked. I couldn't speak. My throat had closed up. My fingers were digging into the carpet so hard my knuckles ached. Your husband, he continued, stepping over a piece of broken doorframe, made a very poor decision tonight. He reached into his jacket. I flinched. My whole body curled inward, muscle memory from 2 years of learning to make myself small. He stopped. Froze mid-motion. Something flickered across his face, not pity, exactly. Recognition, maybe. The look of a man who'd seen women flinch before. Easy, he said, and his voice was different now. Lower. Slower. Like he was talking to a spooked horse. I'm not going to touch you. I'm not going to hurt you. I'm just going to show you something. Is that all right? I nodded. It was all I could manage. He pulled out a phone. Tapped the screen. Turned it toward me. It was a video. Grainy, shot from what looked like a security camera mounted high in a corner. A poker table. Men in suits. Cigar smoke thick as fog. And there, in the center of the frame, was Chase. My husband. My abuser. The man who'd promised to love and cherish me until death did us part. He was sweating. His tie was loosened. His cufflinks, the gold ones with his initials, the ones I'd given him for our first anniversary, were undone. On the screen, Chase pushed a stack of chips into the center of the table. A stack so tall it made my stomach drop. Then he pushed another. Then another. All in. The dealer said something I couldn't hear. Chase's face went pale. He started talking fast, gesturing wildly, pointing at other players, pointing at the ceiling, pointing anywhere but at the cards that had just ruined him. Then the camera angle shifted. And I saw Vinny Stone sitting at the head of the table. He hadn't moved. He hadn't spoken. He'd just watched Chase self-destruct with those gray eyes and that terrible stillness. On the video, Chase was on his feet now. 2 security guards moved closer. He threw his hands up, and I could read his lips even without sound. I can pay. I can pay. I've got collateral. The dealer said something. Chase's answer was immediate. Desperate. He pointed at his wedding ring. Then at his phone. Then he said 5 words that made the whole world stop spinning. My wife. I'll put up my wife. Vinny Stone didn't react. Not on camera. Not for a long, excruciating moment. Then he leaned forward. The sound cut in, just for a second, and I heard his voice through the phone's tinny speaker. Your wife is not a poker chip, Mr. Hamilton. I know, but she's loyal. She's pretty. She'll do whatever you want. Just give me one more hand. One more. The video cut off. The screen went black. I was shaking. Full body tremors, like I'd been dunked in ice water. I couldn't feel my fingers. I couldn't feel my face. The only thing I could feel was the baby, my secret, my 3-month-old miracle, fluttering in my belly like a moth trapped in a jar. Vinny Stone pocketed the phone. Chase Hamilton owes me $470,000. He offered you as payment. My mouth opened. Nothing came out. I don't accept that kind of currency. His jaw tightened. I never have. I never will. The men who do? I buried 2 of them. He crouched down. Brought himself to my level. He smelled like cedar and something sharp, like the aftershave my grandfather used to wear. It was the first thing in 2 years that smelled like safety. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to pack a bag. Whatever you need. Clothes, medicine, anything you can't replace. You're going to come with me. Not because I own you. Because he does, and I'm going to make sure he never touches you again. I stared at him. His face blurred, and I realized I was crying. Silent tears, the kind I'd learned to shed without making a sound. Why? I whispered. Why would you help me? That 2-second pause. Right before he answered. I didn't know yet that it was his tell, his habit, the quiet before every hard truth. Because when I was 9 years old, I watched my father beat my mother to death in our kitchen. And I was too small to stop him. He held up his left hand. A faded scar ran across the palm, thick and white and old. This is the only mark I managed to leave on him. I've spent 33 years trying to do better. He stood. Offered me his hand. I'm not a good man, Jolene. But I'm the man who's going to keep you alive. Take my hand or don't. Either way, your husband will never put his hands on you again. I looked at his palm. The scar. The calluses. The steady, patient stillness of it. I thought about the baby. The coffee can behind the baking soda. The tiny heartbeat I'd heard at the free clinic 2 weeks ago, when I'd told the nurse I didn't have insurance and she'd looked at my bruises and said nothing. I took his hand. His grip was firm but careful. He pulled me to my feet and let go immediately. No lingering. No claiming. Just a transaction between two people who understood that the world was cruel but didn't have to be. 20 minutes, he said. Pack light. Then he turned to the door, what was left of it, and stopped. One of his men murmured something. Vinny shook his head. No. We wait here. She's not walking out alone. And that's how I ended up in a mob boss's kitchen at 2 a.m, drinking chamomile tea from a mug that said "World's Best Grandma," trying to remember how to breathe. The ranch was bigger than I expected. Not flashy. Nothing gold-plated or dripping with crystal. Just solid wood and leather and stone, built to last, built to weather storms. The kitchen smelled like coffee grounds and something baking. A woman in her 60s, housekeeper, maybe, or cook, had appeared silently, set the tea in front of me, and vanished just as quietly. Vinny sat across the table. He'd rolled down his sleeves but hadn't buttoned them. His forearms were tanned, scarred in places, the hands of a man who'd done physical work before he'd done whatever he did now. Drink, he said. Not an order. A suggestion. I wrapped my hands around the mug. The warmth hurt my cold fingers. Is he dead? Your husband? No. Do I want him dead? That 2-second pause. You tell me. I didn't have an answer. Not yet. The feelings were too big, too tangled, a knot of fear and rage and something that felt dangerously like hope. He's going to come looking for me. Yes. He's going to be angry. Probably. He's going to. Vinny leaned forward. Mrs. Hamilton. Chase Hamilton is banned from every casino on the Gulf Coast. He owes money to people who don't send collection notices. He has no assets I can't freeze, no friends I can't reach, and no reputation I can't destroy by noon tomorrow. He is a small, predictable, cowardly man. And small, predictable, cowardly men do not survive in my world. He sat back. Took a sip of his own tea. You, on the other hand, have survived 2 years of something most people can't survive 2 days of. That doesn't make you weak. That makes you the most dangerous person in this room. I laughed. Couldn't help it. A short, sharp, ugly sound. I can't even open a jar of pickles without asking for help. Then we'll teach you to open jars. Among other things. What other things? Whatever you want to learn. I've got lawyers. Accountants. Men who can teach you how to read a contract and women who can teach you how to disappear. You want a divorce? We'll get you one. You want his assets? They're yours. You want to burn his whole life to the ground and roast marshmallows over the ashes? He shrugged. I've got the matches. I stared at him. The scar on his palm caught the kitchen light. Why do you care so much about what happens to me? I told you. My mother. That was 33 years ago. You've helped other women since then. I can tell. He was quiet for a moment. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded photograph. Old. Creased. Faded at the edges. He slid it across the table. I picked it up. 2 men. Younger. Shaking hands in front of a construction site. One of them was Vinny's father, same jaw, same eyes, but harder, crueler, the kind of face that didn't know how to smile. The other man was beaming at the camera, proud, a hard hat tucked under his arm. I didn't recognize the second man at first. Then I looked closer. And my blood turned to ice. The second man was Chase Hamilton. Younger. Thinner. No gray in his hair. But unmistakably, undeniably my husband. That was taken 12 years ago, Vinny said. Your husband and my father built a real estate development company together. Your husband stole $2 million from it. My father had a heart attack when the banks came calling. He died in a hospital bed, alone, bankrupt, and broken. He took the photograph back. Folded it carefully. Returned it to his pocket. I've been waiting 12 years for Chase Hamilton to cross the wrong line. Tonight, he crossed it. He offered me his wife like she was a used car. Vinny's voice didn't rise. It didn't have to. The quiet was more terrifying than any scream. So no, Jolene. This isn't just about my mother. This is about my father. This is about 12 years of patience and a debt your husband doesn't even know he owes. I should have been afraid. Any sane woman would have been afraid. She'd just learned that her rescuer had a 12-year vendetta against her husband, that she was a pawn in a game she didn't even know was being played. But I wasn't afraid. I was furious. Not at Vinny. At Chase. At the 12 years of lies. At the 2 years of fists. At the whole rotten town of Mercy Springs that had watched me walk around with bruises and said nothing. You're using me, I said. To get to him. Yes. Okay. He raised an eyebrow. Okay? I've got conditions. That almost smile again. Name them. 1. I'm not your prisoner. I come and go as I please. 2. Whatever we do to Chase, I get to be part of it. Not watching from the sidelines. In the room. 3. I took a breath. I'm pregnant. 3 months. No one knows. If anything happens to me, the baby goes to my sister in Oklahoma. Promise me. Vinny didn't flinch. Didn't blink. The 2-second pause stretched, and I realized I was holding my breath. Condition 1, accepted. Condition 2, accepted. Condition 3, he placed his hand flat on the table, palm up, the scar catching the light. I promise you, on my mother's grave, that no harm will come to you or your child while I'm still breathing. And I don't break promises. I looked at his hand. At the scar. At the man who'd kicked down my door and offered me tea and vengeance in the same breath. I placed my hand in his. Then let's get to work. The next morning, I woke up in a bedroom I didn't recognize. Sunlight streamed through curtains I hadn't closed. Someone had left a robe folded at the foot of the bed, along with a pair of slippers that looked exactly my size. On the nightstand, a mug of coffee was still steaming, and beside it, a note written in careful, blocky handwriting. Breakfast at 7. Meeting with the lawyer at 9. Take your time. V.S. I read the note 3 times. Take your time. When was the last time anyone had told me to take my time? Chase timed my grocery trips. He questioned me if I took too long in the shower. He'd turned minutes into interrogations and seconds into proof of my disloyalty. Take your time. I cried into the coffee. Quietly. Efficiently. Then I washed my face, put on the robe, and walked downstairs. The kitchen was warm. The woman from last night, her name was Marta, I'd learn later, and she'd worked for Vinny's family for 40 years, was flipping pancakes on a griddle. Vinny sat at the table, reading a newspaper like it was 1952, drinking black coffee from a chipped ceramic mug. He looked up when I entered. How do you feel about pancakes? I feel positively about them. Sit. I sat. Marta slid a plate in front of me. Pancakes, eggs, bacon, a small dish of strawberries that looked like they'd been picked that morning. I couldn't remember the last time I'd eaten breakfast. Chase didn't believe in breakfast. He believed in coffee and resentment. The lawyer's name is Angela Cruz, Vinny said, not looking up from his paper. She's the best divorce attorney in 3 counties. She's also my cousin. Of course she is. She's going to ask you questions. Hard ones. About the abuse. About the finances. About anything Chase might use against you. I know how to answer hard questions. I know you do. He turned a page. But knowing and being ready are different things. Eat your pancakes. I ate my pancakes. They were perfect. Light, fluffy, the kind my grandmother used to make before she died and left me the diner and a recipe box full of secrets. Halfway through my second pancake, I said, I want to reopen the diner. Vinny put down his paper. Okay. I want to use it as a base. A place where people can see me. Where Chase can see me. I want him to watch me succeed while his whole life falls apart. That's spite. Yes. He nodded. I respect that. Marta snorted from the stove. It was the first sound she'd made all morning. I want to learn everything, I continued. How to run a business. How to find hidden assets. How to make a man regret ever learning my name. Vinny folded his newspaper. Set it aside. Gave me his full attention, those gray eyes as unreadable as ever. Then here's your first lesson. Revenge isn't about the big moments. It's about the small ones. It's about making him wake up every morning a little more powerless than the day before. It's about taking away everything he loves, one piece at a time, until all that's left is the man he should have been. He stood. Carried his mug to the sink. Paused at the doorway. Angela will be here in an hour. Be ready to tell her everything. Not the version you told the neighbors. Not the version you told yourself. The truth. All of it. I don't know if I can. You can. You survived 2 years with a monster. A lawyer asking questions is nothing. He left. His boots echoed down the hallway. Marta turned from the stove and looked at me. Her eyes were dark and knowing and ancient. You're the 5th woman he's helped, she said. The first one who asked for conditions. Is that a good thing? She didn't answer. She just smiled, turned back to the griddle, and said, there's more bacon if you want it. Angela Cruz was 5 feet of concentrated fury wrapped in an expensive pantsuit. She had her cousin's gray eyes and absolutely none of his patience. Within 20 minutes, she'd extracted my entire life story, the courtship, the abuse, the finances, the pregnancy, the poker game, the broken door, and had filled half a legal pad with notes. He's broke, she said flatly. Your husband. Whatever he told you about the real estate business, he's been hemorrhaging money for years. The gambling just sped it up. I figured. He's also been hiding assets in your name. Did you know about the LLC? What LLC? Hamilton Properties LLC. Filed in Texas 2 years ago. You're listed as the sole owner. I stared at her. I never signed anything. Doesn't matter. Your name is on the paperwork. Which means, legally, you own everything. The office building. The development lots. The equipment. All of it. I felt the floor tilt. So when he said he was building a business for us, he was building it on your back. Using your credit. Your name. Probably your grandmother's diner as collateral at some point. She tapped her pen against the legal pad. The good news is, you're not a victim in the divorce. You're the plaintiff. And you've got leverage. What's the bad news? Chase knows you've got leverage. The moment he realizes you're not coming back, he's going to try to destroy you. He'll claim you embezzled. He'll claim you're an unfit mother. He'll drag your name through every gutter in Mercy Springs. Let him try. Angela smiled. It was not a warm smile. I was hoping you'd say that. The first 2 weeks on the ranch blurred together. Mornings with Angela, learning the architecture of my own destruction. Afternoons with a man named Frank, who taught me how to track shell companies and spot fraudulent transfers. Evenings with Vinny, who didn't talk much but was always there, a steady presence in the corner of my vision. I learned that he woke up at 5 every morning. That he drank exactly 2 cups of coffee, never more, never less. That he had a dry, almost invisible sense of humor that snuck up on you when you weren't expecting it. You're staring at those numbers like they insulted your mother, he said one evening, watching me glare at a spreadsheet. They did. Metaphorically. Take a break. I don't want a break. I want to understand how Chase hid $200,000 in a fake consulting company called Synergy Solutions. Who names a crime Synergy Solutions? Someone who's never committed a crime before. I laughed. The sound surprised me. It surprised Vinny too, I think, because he looked at me differently after that. Not like a project. Not like a pawn. Like a person he was genuinely starting to like. Can I ask you something? I said. You just did. That's not an answer. That 2-second pause. Ask. The photograph. Your father and Chase. Why did you keep it all these years? He was quiet for a long moment. Longer than 2 seconds. Outside, the wind rattled the windows. Somewhere in the distance, a horse whinnied. Because I needed to remember, he said finally. Not the anger. The patience. My father taught me one thing before he died. He said, Vincent, don't get mad. Get everything. Get everything? He meant that revenge isn't an emotion. It's a checklist. You don't strike until every box is ticked. You don't swing until you know you won't miss. And now? Are the boxes ticked? He looked at me. Something flickered in those gray eyes. Almost. There's one left. Which one? That 2-second pause. But instead of answering, he stood. Walked to the window. Looked out at the dark Texas sky. When you're ready to go back to town, he said, I'll go with you. Not beside you. Behind you. This is your fight. I'm just the backup. It wasn't an answer to my question. But it was the only one I was going to get. 3 weeks after the night Chase sold me, I was ready. The diner had been closed for 18 months. The windows were dusty. The sign was faded. The front door stuck the same way it always had, you had to push with your hip, just so, a little shimmy to the left. I stood on the sidewalk, looking at it. My grandmother's diner. She'd opened it in 1962 with $500 and a meatloaf recipe. She'd fed mayors and mechanics, cheerleaders and convicts, everyone welcome, everyone equal. She'd died 6 years ago, and I'd let Chase convince me to close it down 6 months before that. Too much work, he'd said. You're not a businesswoman, he'd said. Let me handle things, he'd said. I'd believed him. That was on me. I'd believed a lot of things. Ready? Vinny stood a few paces back, hands in his pockets, looking for all the world like a man who just happened to be standing on this particular sidewalk on this particular morning. Ask me again in 10 seconds. 10. I didn't mean literally. I know. I took a breath. Grabbed the handle. Shimmy to the left. The door opened. The smell hit me first. Dust and old grease and something underneath, something that smelled like cinnamon and coffee and every Saturday morning of my childhood. The booths were still there. The counter. The stools with the cracked red vinyl. The grill, cold and dark and waiting. I walked to the center of the room. turned in a slow circle. "Hello, old friend." "That's a strange thing to say to a diner," Vinny said from the doorway. "I'm a strange person." "I'm starting to see that." I ran my hand along the counter. My fingers came back gray with dust. When I was 12, my grandmother taught me how to make her meatloaf. She said, "Jolene, a good meatloaf is like a good marriage. It takes time, it takes patience, and if it falls apart, you didn't use enough eggs." Vinny made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Your grandmother sounds like she was a wise woman." She was. She also told me never to marry a man who wears cufflinks. I should have listened. I turned to face him. The morning light caught the dust motes floating in the air. "I'm going to reopen this diner. I'm going to make it the heart of this town again. And when Chase sees me standing in the middle of everything he tried to take from me, surrounded by people who finally stopped looking away, I want him to know that I did it without him. I did it in spite of him. I did it because of him." Vinny nodded slowly. "That's a good checklist. Thank you." We stood there in the dusty diner, the mob boss and the runaway wife, two people who'd been shaped by violence but weren't ready to be defined by it. Then Vinny did something he'd never done before. He walked to the grill. Picked up a spatula. Examined it with the same intensity he probably brought to business negotiations. "You're going to need a cook," he said. "I was a cook before I was a punching bag. I think I remember how." "Good. Because I'm hungry." I laughed. The sound echoed through the empty diner, bouncing off the dusty booths and the cracked vinyl stools. It sounded like the first note of a song I'd forgotten how to sing. "Give me 2 weeks," I said. "And I'll make you the best breakfast you've ever had. I'll hold you to that." He set the spatula down. Walked back to the door. Paused with his hand on the frame. "One more thing," he said. "The next time Chase shows his face in this town, it won't just be me he's answering to. It'll be you. And from what I've seen, you're a lot scarier than I am." He left. The door swung shut behind him with a familiar creak. I stood alone in my grandmother's diner, tracing the cracks in the linoleum with my eyes. 3 months pregnant. 2 years beaten. 1 night away from being sold like property. And for the first time in my entire adult life, I felt something that terrified me more than Chase's fists ever had. I felt free. But freedom, as I was about to learn, comes with a price. And Chase Hamilton wasn't the only one who was going to pay it. That afternoon, Mrs. Eileen Potts appeared on the sidewalk outside the diner. She was wearing a floral dress and holding a covered dish, and she was peering through the dusty window like she'd just discovered a new species of bird. I opened the door. "Mrs. Potts." "Jolene Harper. I heard you were back." Her eyes swept over me, cataloging everything. The way I stood. The way I dressed. The absence of bruises. "You look different." "I feel different." "I brought you a casserole." She held out the dish. "Chicken and rice." "I know you probably haven't been eating right." I took the casserole. It was still warm. "Thank you." Mrs. Potts didn't leave. She stood there, knitting needles poking out of her oversized purse, her eyes sharp and curious behind her bifocals. "I saw what happened," she said quietly. "That night. At your house. I saw the door come off its hinges. I saw you leave with that Stone man." I went very still. "Why didn't you call the police?" She didn't answer right away. Instead, she reached into her purse and pulled out her knitting. A half-finished scarf, blue and green, the needles clicking softly as she worked. "Because I've been watching Chase Hamilton hurt you for 2 years," she said. "And I've called the police 3 times. You know what happened?" "What?" "Nothing. Not a single thing. Deputy Raines came by, talked to Chase on the porch, laughed at one of his jokes, and left. Every time. I felt something crack open inside me." "You called?" 3 times. After the third time, I stopped calling. I started watching instead. And I started keeping notes. Notes? Mrs. Potts tapped her knitting needles together twice. The sound was sharp and deliberate, like a judge's gavel. I've lived in this town for 58 years, Jolene. I've seen mayors come and go. I've seen churches burn down and get rebuilt. And I've seen men like Chase Hamilton destroy good women because nobody wanted to get involved. She reached into her purse again and pulled out a notebook. Small. Leather-bound. Worn at the edges. This is every date I saw him hit you. Every time I heard you cry through the walls. Every instance of Deputy Raines showing up and doing nothing. I also have copies of financial documents Chase tried to hide in his office dumpster. He's not as clever as he thinks. I stared at the notebook. My hands were shaking. Why are you giving this to me now? Because you're finally ready to fight back. She pressed the notebook into my hands. And because I'm old, and I'm tired, and I'd like to see one good thing happen in this town before I die. She turned to leave. Then stopped. One more thing. That Stone man. The one everyone whispers about. She looked back at me, and her eyes were not the eyes of a harmless old lady. They were the eyes of a woman who'd seen everything and forgotten nothing. They say he's a monster. But in my experience, the real monsters are the ones who go to church every Sunday and beat their wives on Monday. That man? He's never pretended to be anything other than what he is. That's more than I can say for most people in Mercy Springs. She walked away. Her knitting needles clicked. The casserole was warm in my hands. I looked down at the notebook. Opened it to the first page. March 12th, bruise on her left cheekbone. Told the checkout girl at Piggly Wiggly she walked into a door. I've walked into doors. They don't leave marks like that. The pages were filled. Dozens of entries. Dates and times and descriptions, written in the neat, precise handwriting of a woman who'd been paying attention when the rest of the town had looked away. I closed the notebook. Held it against my chest. And I made a promise to myself, right there on the sidewalk outside my grandmother's diner. Chase Hamilton was going to pay. Not just for what he'd done to me. For every woman who'd ever walked into a door. For every neighbor who'd ever heard crying and turned up the television. For every deputy who'd ever laughed at a joke on a porch while a woman iced her ribs inside. He was going to pay. And I was going to make sure the whole town watched. The next morning, I walked into the Stonewall Casino for the first time. It wasn't what I expected. No flashing lights. No velvet ropes. Just a low, elegant building set back from the highway, surrounded by live oaks and valet parking. Inside, it smelled like leather and money. The kind of place where deals got made that never made the papers. Vinny met me in the lobby. He was wearing a black suit today, no tie, and he looked like a different person. Colder. More dangerous. The version of himself he showed the world. You wanted to learn everything, he said. This is where the lessons start. I'm ready. We'll see. He led me through the casino floor. Past the poker tables. Past the roulette wheels. Past the men in suits and the women in dresses that cost more than my first car. Everyone nodded at Vinny. Everyone stepped aside. We ended up in a private office on the second floor. Windows overlooking the main floor. A desk with nothing on it except a phone and a single folder. That folder, Vinny said, contains everything we've found on Chase Hamilton. Shell companies. Hidden accounts. The real estate fraud he's been running for 3 years. It's enough to put him away for a decade, maybe more. So why haven't you used it? Because we were waiting for you. I looked at him. What do you mean? He picked up the folder and handed it to me. This is your weapon, Jolene. Not mine. If I use it, Chase goes to prison, and you're just the woman he hit. But if you use it, if you're the one who stands up in court and lays it all out, every bruise, every lie, every dime he stole, then you're not a victim. You're the victor. I opened the folder. The first page was a photograph of Chase, younger, shaking hands with a man I didn't recognize. The caption read, Hamilton and Garza, Shell Company No. 3, linked to $340,000 in fraudulent real estate transfers. There's more, Vinny said. A lot more. But before you see it, I need to know something. What? That 2-second pause. Do you want him destroyed, or do you want him dead? Because I can do either. But I won't do both without your say-so. The question hung in the air between us. Heavy. Irreversible. I thought about Chase. About the first time he'd hit me, a year into our marriage, after I'd burned a steak. About the way he'd apologized, crying, promising it would never happen again. About the second time. The 5th. The 20th. I thought about the baby growing inside me. About the life I wanted for her, or him, a life without fear, without flinching, without learning to make yourself small. I don't want him dead, I said quietly. Death is too easy. Death is a single moment, and then it's over. I want him to live. I want him to live a long, long life, and I want every day of that life to be a reminder of what he lost. Vinny looked at me for a long moment. Then he smiled. It was a small smile, barely a curve of the lips, but it was the first real smile I'd seen from him. You're learning, he said. No. I'm remembering. I was never weak, Vinny. I just forgot how to be strong. Then let's remind you. He walked to the window and looked down at the casino floor. The cards were being dealt. The chips were being stacked. The games went on, endless and indifferent. Your husband is hosting a real estate seminar tomorrow night, he said. At the Mercy Springs Community Center. He's going to give a speech about opportunity and the American dream. Half the town will be there. I know. I think you should attend. I closed the folder. Tucked it under my arm. I think I should too. Are you going to cause a scene? I smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. No. I'm going to sit in the front row. I'm going to smile. And I'm going to let him see me. Really see me. And then I'm going to walk out, and he's going to spend the rest of the night wondering what I know. And the rest of his life finding out. Vinny turned from the window. Those gray eyes glinted. Mrs. Hamilton, I do believe you're going to be my favorite student. Don't call me that. Call you what? Mrs. Hamilton. That name died the night he sold me. He nodded slowly. What should I call you? I thought about it. About the diner. About my grandmother. About the woman I used to be and the woman I was becoming. Joe, I said. Call me Joe. Joe, he repeated, like he was tasting the word. I like it. Don't get attached. I'm not staying on your ranch forever. I wouldn't expect you to. But while you're here, you might as well learn something useful. Like what? That 2-second pause. Then he reached into his desk drawer and pulled out a deck of cards. Like how to read a man across a poker table. You'd be amazed what people tell you when they think you're just a pretty face holding a hand of cards. He shuffled the deck. The cards whispered between his fingers. Deal you in? I sat down across from him. Put the folder on the table. Took the cards. Deal. The next evening, I stood in front of my grandmother's mirror, the one I'd rescued from the diner before Chase convinced me to close it, and looked at myself for the first time in 2 years. Really looked. The woman staring back wasn't the one I remembered. She was thinner. Harder. Her eyes had a flinty edge that hadn't been there before. But she was also standing straight. Shoulders back. Chin up. No bruises. No concealer. No lies. I'd bought a new dress. Nothing fancy. Just a simple navy blue thing from a consignment shop 2 towns over. But it fit. And it didn't have any tears that needed mending, any stains that needed hiding. I ran my hand over my belly. Still flat. Still secret. You stay put in there, I whispered. Mama's got work to do. Vinny was waiting in the truck. He'd offered to drive me, and I'd let him. Not because I needed protection. Because I wanted a witness. You're quiet, he said as we pulled onto the highway. I'm rehearsing. Rehearsing what? Every possible thing he might say. Every lie. Every excuse. I want to be ready. You can't rehearse for chaos. You can only stay calm in the middle of it. Is that another lesson? That 2-second pause. It's the only one that matters. The Mercy Springs Community Center was exactly as I remembered it. Cinderblock walls painted beige. Fluorescent lights that hummed too loud. A stage at one end with a podium and a microphone. Folding chairs arranged in neat rows. The smell of bad coffee and industrial carpet cleaner. Chase hadn't arrived yet. But half the town had. I saw faces I'd known my whole life. Linda from the post office. Bill who owned the hardware store. Pastor Jim from the Methodist church. Mrs. Patterson who'd taught me English in 10th grade. They saw me too. And they stared. I walked down the center aisle like I owned the place. Vinny hung back near the door, arms crossed, watching. I found a seat in the front row. Dead center. The chair squeaked when I sat down. The sound cut through the room like a gunshot. Linda from the post office leaned over. Joe? Is that you? I heard you were away. I was. I'm back. We all thought you'd left town. After what happened with Chase and that casino business. She trailed off. Didn't know how to finish the sentence. Nobody ever knew how to finish the sentence when it came to me and Chase. I didn't leave, I said, loud enough for the whole front row to hear. I was taken. By a man who kicked down my door while my husband was trying to break my jaw. Silence. The kind of silence that makes your ears ring. Then the back door opened, and Chase Hamilton walked in. He was wearing his best suit. Navy, like my dress. Probably tailored. Probably paid for with money he'd stolen from someone. His cufflinks caught the light. Gold. Monogrammed. He straightened them as he walked toward the stage. He hadn't seen me yet. He was too busy working the room. Shaking hands. Slapping backs. Flashing that $1 million smile at everyone who'd ever believed his lies. Then he reached the podium. Looked out at the audience. And froze. His eyes found mine. And for one perfect, beautiful moment, I watched every drop of color drain from his face. Good evening, Chase, I said. Nice cufflinks. The microphone picked up the silence that followed. Amplified it. Broadcast it to every corner of the room. Chase recovered fast. He always did. Jolene. I didn't expect to see you here. His voice was smooth. Warm. The voice of a man who'd never broken anything in his life. Ladies and gentlemen, this is my wife, Jolene. We've been going through a bit of a rough patch, but I'm sure we'll work things out. He straightened his cufflinks. Twice. Actually, I said, still seated, still calm, we're getting divorced. And I'm taking everything. Someone gasped. Someone else dropped a coffee cup. The sound of ceramic shattering on linoleum was deeply satisfying. Chase's smile flickered. Just for a second. Now, honey, this isn't the time or place. Honey? I stood up. Slowly. Deliberately. The same way Vinny moved. You sold me to a mob boss 3 weeks ago. You offered me as collateral for a poker debt. You don't get to call me honey. The room erupted. Whispers and gasps and the scraping of chairs as people turned to look at each other, then back at Chase, then at me. That's a lie, Chase said. His voice was still smooth. Still calm. But his hand went to his cufflink again. Straightening. Straightening. She's been under a lot of stress. The doctors say. The doctors say I'm pregnant, I said. 3 months. Your baby. The baby you almost got killed because you can't stop gambling. This time, the silence was absolute. Even the fluorescent lights seemed to stop humming. Chase's face went through several expressions in rapid succession. Shock. Rage. Calculation. He settled on concern. Fake, polished, political concern. Jolene, I had no idea. Why didn't you tell me? Because the last time I told you something you didn't want to hear, you put my head through the bathroom mirror. I turned to face the audience. My neighbors. My former customers. The people who'd watched me walk around with bruises for 2 years and said nothing. Some of you knew, I said. My voice didn't shake. I was proud of that. Some of you heard me crying through the walls. Some of you saw the marks I couldn't hide. And you looked away. I'm not here to blame you. I'm here to tell you that I'm done protecting him. I'm done lying for him. And I'm done being the only one who has to pay for his sins. I picked up my purse. Walked to the aisle. Paused. Oh, and Chase? Hamilton Properties LLC? The company you put in my name? I found the paperwork. It's mine now. All of it. I'll be taking over effective immediately. His face went white. Then red. Then something ugly that he couldn't quite hide. You can't do that. I already did. I smiled. It was the first genuine smile I'd felt in years. Enjoy your seminar. I walked out. The whispers followed me like a wake behind a boat. When I reached the back of the room, Vinny fell into step beside me. That was restrained, he said. I was aiming for devastating. You achieved both. We stepped outside into the warm Texas night. The stars were out. The air smelled like cut grass and distant barbecue. I took a deep breath. Then another. Then I started laughing. What's funny? Vinny asked. I just realized something. For 2 years, I was terrified of that man. 2 years of flinching. 2 years of making myself small. And he's not a monster. He's just a bully. A sad, predictable, cufflink-straightening bully. Cufflinks, Vinny said thoughtfully. Is that his tell? Every time. Before every lie. Good to know. We got in the truck. Vinny started the engine but didn't pull out. Instead, he sat there, hands on the wheel, staring through the windshield at the community center. He's going to retaliate, he said. Not tonight. Tonight he'll lick his wounds and plan. But soon. A man like that can't let a woman humiliate him in public. I'm counting on it. Vinny looked at me. Explain. If he retaliates, he makes a mistake. If he makes a mistake, we catch it. If we catch it, he's finished. That's the checklist, right? That 2-second pause. Then something I'd never seen before, Vinny Stone, third-generation casino boss, the man who made debt collectors tremble, actually grinned. You're a fast learner, Joe. I had a good teacher. Don't get sentimental. Wouldn't dream of it. He pulled out of the parking lot. As we drove past the community center windows, I caught one last glimpse of Chase. He was still at the podium. Still talking. But his hands were shaking. And the audience wasn't looking at him anymore. They were looking at their phones. At each other. At the door I'd just walked through. The cracks were forming. All I had to do was keep pushing. The next morning, Mrs. Potts was waiting on my diner's front steps when I arrived. She had her knitting bag, her floral dress, and an expression of deep satisfaction. I heard about last night, she said. Linda from the post office called me at 6 in the morning. She said Chase Hamilton looked like he'd swallowed a hornet. Linda from the post office has a big mouth. Linda from the post office is the reason I know everyone's business. She tapped her knitting needles together twice. I brought you something else. Something that might help. She reached into her bag and pulled out a thick manila envelope. These are copies of the real estate contracts Chase has been pushing through the county office. He's been overvaluing properties, taking out loans against the inflated prices, and pocketing the difference. It's fraud. Plain and simple. I took the envelope. It was heavy. How did you get these? My late husband was the county clerk for 30 years. His replacement owes me a favor. Several favors, actually. I cashed them all in. Mrs. Potts, you're a dangerous woman. I'm a bored woman with a knitting habit and a strong sense of justice. That's worse. She stood, brushing off her dress. Use those wisely. And when you're ready to reopen this diner, let me know. I make a mean pecan pie. She walked away. Her knitting needles clicked. The morning sun caught the silver in her hair. I unlocked the diner door, hip shimmy to the left, and stepped inside. The dust was still there. The cracked vinyl. The cold grill. But it felt different now. Less like a tomb. More like a cocoon. I set Mrs. Potts' envelope on the counter and started cleaning. 3 hours later, Deputy Cody Raines walked through the door. He was in uniform. His glasses were smudged. He was cleaning them with the edge of his shirt, a nervous habit I'd seen 100 times before. Joe. Deputy. He winced. You used to call me Cody. I used to do a lot of things. He stood there, shifting his weight from foot to foot. The silence stretched. I kept wiping down the counter. I came to apologize, he said finally. No. No? I don't want your apology, Cody. I want your help. He blinked. Put his glasses back on. Took them off again. Help with what? I reached under the counter and pulled out Mrs. Potts' notebook. The one with every date, every bruise, every ignored call. I slid it across the counter toward him. This is a record of every time you came to my house, talked to my husband on the porch, and left while I was inside bleeding. 17 times. 17. He stared at the notebook like it was a snake. Joe, I didn't know. You knew. My voice was calm. Vinny would have been proud. You knew, and you looked away, because Chase was your friend, and I was just his wife, and it was easier to believe his lies than to do your job. Joe. Mrs. Potts called you 3 times. 3 separate reports. You never filed a single one. Do you know what that makes you? He didn't answer. His glasses were back in his hands. Cleaning. Cleaning. It makes you an accessory, I said. Not legally, maybe. But morally. You helped him hurt me. You gave him permission. Every time you shook his hand and walked away, you told him it was okay to hit me again. Cody's face crumpled. I'd known him since we were kids. He wasn't evil. He was weak. And weakness, in the wrong hands, does just as much damage as cruelty. What do you want me to do? He whispered. I want you to be the cop you swore you'd be. I want you to file those reports. All 3 of them. Backdated. And I want you to testify, when the time comes, that you saw the bruises and did nothing. That the system failed. That you failed. That could cost me my job. It might. But it might also save someone else. The next woman. The next wife. The next time a neighbor calls and a deputy has to decide whether to do his job or protect his friend. He was quiet for a long time. The only sound was the tick of the diner clock and the distant hum of a lawnmower. Then he picked up the notebook. I'll file the reports. Today. Today. And Joe? What? I'm sorry. I know you don't want to hear it. But I am. I looked at him. Really looked. He was 10 years older than the boy I'd gone to school with. Tired. Ashamed. Carrying a weight he'd pretended wasn't there. Prove it, I said. Don't tell me. Prove it. He nodded. Tucked the notebook under his arm. Walked out. The door swung shut behind him with that familiar creak. I stood alone in the diner, hands gripping the edge of the counter, heart pounding. I'd done it. I'd confronted one of the people who'd failed me most. And I hadn't cried. Hadn't screamed. Hadn't broken anything. Progress. That evening, back at the ranch, Vinny was waiting on the porch. He had a glass of something amber in one hand and his phone in the other. Angela called, he said as I climbed the steps. Chase's lawyer filed an emergency motion to freeze the Hamilton property's assets. They're claiming you forged the ownership documents. Can they do that? Angela's already filed a countermotion. She's also requesting a forensic audit of every property Chase has ever touched. The judge is a woman named Patricia Holloway. Grew up poor. Put herself through law school. Has exactly zero patience for men who steal from their wives. So we're winning? We're not losing. He handed me a glass. Iced tea, not whiskey. He remembered I was pregnant. There's something else. One of my people at the casino flagged a visitor this afternoon. Guess who? Chase. Chase. He was trying to get a line of credit. Using Hamilton properties as collateral. Which he doesn't own anymore. The credit desk denied him. He didn't take it well. I sat down in the chair beside him. The porch looked out over the ranch. Horses in the distance. A pond catching the last light of sunset. It was so peaceful it almost felt like a different planet from Mercy Springs. Why would he try that? I asked. He has to know we'd catch it. Desperation. Stupidity. Habit. Take your pick. Vinny swirled his whiskey. Men like Chase can't stop. It's not about the money. It's about the game. The thrill. The belief that he's smarter than everyone else. He'll keep pushing until there's nothing left to push against. And then? And then he'll break. The question is what he breaks against. I stared at the pond. A heron was standing at the edge, perfectly still, waiting for a fish to make a mistake. I want to be there when it happens, I said. Not watching from a distance. Not hearing about it secondhand. I want to be in the room. You will be. Promise? That 2-second pause. I don't make promises I can't keep. Then make this one. He turned to look at me. The scar on his palm caught the porch light. Somewhere in the distance, a horse whinnied. I promise, he said. When Chase Hamilton falls, you'll be the last thing he sees. The next 2 weeks were a blur of motion. Angela filed motions. Frank dug up more fraud. Mrs. Potts delivered casseroles and intelligence with equal frequency. Deputy Raines filed his reports, all 3 of them, and the county prosecutor opened an official investigation. And I worked on the diner. It was therapy, scrubbing those floors. Cleaning the grill. Replacing the broken tiles. Every swipe of the mop felt like wiping away a piece of the old Joe. The one who flinched. The one who apologized for existing. The one who'd believed that love meant enduring pain. Marta came by one afternoon with lunch. She looked around the diner, nodded once, and said, "It needs more light. It needs a lot of things. It needs you. The rest will follow." She set the food on the counter and left without another word. I was starting to understand that Marta communicated mostly in pronouncements and food. Mrs. Potts arrived next. She'd brought her knitting and a thermos of coffee. I heard the prosecutor's office is moving forward. They found 18 separate instances of fraud in Chase's real estate deals. 18. Only 18? She cackled. I like this new you, Joe. The old you never would have made that joke. The old me never would have had anything to joke about. She settled into a booth, needles clicking. The town's turning on him, you know. Slowly. People are remembering things. Things they should have said years ago. Linda from the post office told me Chase tried to shortchange her on a property tax payment. Bill from the hardware store said he never paid for the lumber for that development on Maple Street. Everyone's got a story now. That's how it works, I said. When the dam breaks, everyone remembers they saw the cracks. Smart girl. She tapped her needles twice. There's one more thing. Something I should have told you weeks ago. I stopped scrubbing. What? The night you left. The night Chase sold you to Mr. Stone. I wasn't just watching from my window. She set down her knitting. Her hands were trembling slightly, but her eyes were steady. I was on the phone with the state police. Not the county. The state. I'd called them because I knew Cody wouldn't do anything. They were on their way when Mr. Stone's men broke down the door. They arrived 10 minutes after you left. I stared at her. Why didn't you tell me this before? Because I was ashamed. She looked down at her knitting. I waited too long. I should have called them months earlier. Years earlier. But I was afraid. Afraid of being the troublemaker. Afraid of being wrong. Afraid of Chase. Mrs. Potts. Let me finish. The state police took a report that night. It's on file. It corroborates everything. The noise complaint, the broken door, the witness who saw you leave with Mr. Stone. It's evidence, Joe. Real evidence. Not just my notes and your bruises. I sat down across from her. The weight of what she was saying settled over me like a blanket. You've been carrying this for weeks, I said. Watching me fight. Watching me scrape together evidence. And you had this the whole time. I needed you to be ready. I needed to know that when I gave you this, you'd use it. Not break under the weight of it. And now? She reached across the table and took my hand. Her fingers were thin and cool and surprisingly strong. Now I know. You're not going to break. You're going to win. The county prosecutor filed formal charges on a Wednesday. Fraud. Embezzlement. Domestic assault. The list went on for 2 pages. Chase was arrested at his office. This time, there was no warning. No opportunity to run. Deputy Raines made the arrest himself, with 2 state troopers as backup. I watched from across the street. Mrs. Potts stood beside me. Linda from the post office was there too. And Bill from the hardware store. And half the town. Chase came out in handcuffs. No suit jacket. No cufflinks. Just a white shirt and a face twisted with fury. When he saw me, he stopped walking. The troopers tried to push him forward, but he planted his feet. This isn't over, he shouted. You hear me, Jolene? This isn't over. I didn't answer. I just watched. You think you've won? You think that casino thug is going to protect you forever? He's using you. The same way I used you. The same way everyone's always used you. His voice cracked on the last word. The troopers shoved him into the cruiser. The door slammed. The window muffled his screaming. Linda touched my arm. Are you okay? I'm fine, I said. And I meant it. Mrs. Potts was knitting. She hadn't looked up once. That man, she said, has the emotional intelligence of a burnt casserole. I laughed. Right there on the sidewalk, in front of half the town, watching my husband get hauled off to jail. I laughed until tears ran down my face. I needed that, I said. I know, dear. I know. The trial was set for 3 months out. Angela said the case was strong. The forensic audit had uncovered more than we'd even hoped for. The domestic assault charges were backed by medical records, witness statements, and Mrs. Potts' meticulous notebook. But Chase made bail. Of course he did. Some cousin in Oklahoma put up the money. By Friday, he was back in Mercy Springs, confined to house arrest with an ankle monitor and a restraining order that said he couldn't come within 500 feet of me. He'll violate it, Vinny said that night. We were in his office, going over the trial prep. Men like Chase don't believe rules apply to them. I know. Which is why I'm staying at the ranch tonight. Marta's here. Frank's here. 2 of my best men are patrolling the perimeter. I don't need a security detail. I know you don't. But I need one. Humor me. I looked at him. The scar on his palm. The gray eyes that never quite softened. You're worried about me. I'm worried about the trial. You're the key witness. Without you, the case collapses. You're a terrible liar. That 2-second pause. I know. We sat in silence for a while. The clock on his desk ticked. Somewhere in the house, Marta was humming a song I didn't recognize. Can I ask you something? I said. You always ask that. Can I? Ask. Why haven't you ever gotten married? A man like you. Successful. Loyal. You could have any woman you wanted. The pause was longer this time. Long enough that I thought he wasn't going to answer. I was married, he said finally. A long time ago. Her name was Elena. She died. Cancer. 12 years ago. I'm sorry. So am I. Every day. He looked at his hands. After she died, I told myself I'd never put anyone in that position again. The position of loving someone whose life is complicated. Complicated is one word for it. I'm not a good man, Joe. I've done things. Things Elena never knew about. Things I'll have to answer for someday. But I made her a promise before she died. I promised I'd use whatever power I had to protect people who couldn't protect themselves. Like me. Like you. And the others before you. And the ones who'll come after. I reached across the desk and took his hand. The one with the scar. He stiffened, surprised, but didn't pull away. You're wrong about yourself, I said. You are a good man. A complicated man. A dangerous man. But a good one. He looked at our hands. Then at me. You're the first person who's believed that in a long time. Then you've been surrounding yourself with the wrong people. Probably. I squeezed his hand once and let go. Thank you. For everything. I don't say it enough. You don't have to say it at all. I know. But I want to. The clock ticked. Marta's humming stopped. The house settled into silence. And that's when we heard the tires on the gravel. Vinny was on his feet before I could blink. His hand went to his hip, and I realized for the first time that he was carrying. Not a threat. Just a fact. Stay here, he said. Vinny. Stay. Here. He moved to the window. Peered through the blinds. His expression didn't change, but his shoulders tightened. It's him. Chase. The front door rattled. Not a knock. A kick. Then another. The wood groaned. Joe. Chase's voice was ragged, drunk, unhinged. Joe, I know you're in there. You and that mobbed-up freak. Come out here and face me. Vinny pulled out his phone. Dialed. He's at the ranch. Front door. Yes. Now. He hung up. Police are on their way. 15 minutes. 15 minutes is a long time. Then we wait. Another kick. This time, the doorframe splintered. The same sound I'd heard the night this all started. The night Vinny had kicked down my door and offered me a way out. But I wasn't the same woman who'd cowered on the floor that night. I wasn't scared. I wasn't flinching. I was furious. "Joe," Vinny said sharply. Don't. Don't what? Don't go out there." I looked at the door. At the splintering wood. At the man who'd spent 2 years breaking me, trying to break through one last time. "He's not going to stop," I said. "Not tonight. Not ever. Not unless someone stops him. The police will stop him. The police have been stopping him for years. That's the problem." I started walking toward the door. "Joe." Vinny's voice was different now. Not cold. Not commanding. Something I'd never heard before. "Please." I stopped. Turned. "You said you'd be my backup. Not my keeper." "I'm not trying to keep you. I'm trying to protect you." "I don't need protection. I need this to end. Tonight. Right now." With me looking him in the eye and telling him that he doesn't get to scare me anymore. Vinny held my gaze for a long moment. Then he nodded. Once. Short. Sharp. "I'll be right behind you. Stay by the window. I want him to see you. I want him to know that if he touches me, you'll end him." That's a lot of faith in me. It's not faith. It's certainty. I walked to the front door. Unlocked it. Opened it. Chase was on the porch, fist raised for another kick. He was disheveled. Sweating. His ankle monitor blinked red in the darkness. He'd cut it off. That was another charge. He probably didn't care. Finally, he spat. "Finally, you stop hiding behind your guard dog." "I wasn't hiding. I was deciding whether you were worth the trouble." "Worth the," his face contorted. "You destroyed my life, you ungrateful little." "Your life?" I stepped forward. He stepped back. "You destroyed your life, Chase. You gambled away your business. You sold your wife. You lied to everyone who ever trusted you." I just held up a mirror. "You think you're so much better than me? You think that Stone is any different from me? He's using you. The same way I used you. The same way everyone's going to use you. You're nothing without me, Jolene. Nothing." I laughed. Not the hysterical laughter from the sidewalk. Something colder. Something sharper. "That's the difference between us, Chase. You need people to be small so you can feel big. I don't need you at all. I never did. I just didn't know it." His hand went to his cufflink. Straightened it. Even now. Even unhinged and drunk and wearing an ankle monitor. The habit held. "There it is," I said. "What?" "The cufflink. You straighten it every time you lie. Every single time. I've been watching you do it for 2 years, and I never called you on it. But I'm calling you on it now. Everything you've said tonight is a lie. Every threat. Every insult. Every desperate grab for control. Lies." He looked down at his wrist. At the cufflink. At the tell he'd never known he had. "I'm not afraid of you," I continued. "I haven't been afraid of you since the night you sold me. You know why? Because that night, I saw you for what you really are. Not a monster. Not a mastermind. Just a sad, small man who can't stop losing." His face went white. Then red. Then something ugly and uncontrolled. "You." "Aha. Careful." I pointed at the window. Vinny was standing there, arms crossed, face utterly blank. "He's watching. And the police are on their way. You've already violated your restraining order. You've already tampered with your ankle monitor. Do you really want to add assault to the list?" His fists clenched. Unclenched. clenched again. I could see the war happening inside him. The rage. The calculation. The realization that he'd already lost. "I'm going to destroy you," he whispered. "If it's the last thing I do." "No, Chase. You're going to go to prison. For a long time. And I'm going to reopen my grandmother's diner. And raise my baby. And live the life you tried to take from me. That's what's going to happen." The sirens started in the distance. Getting closer. Chase heard them. His face crumpled. All the rage collapsed inward, and for just a moment, he looked exactly like what he was, a broken man who'd thrown everything away. "Joe," he said. His voice cracked. "Please." "Please what?" "Please don't. I can't go to prison. I can't. I'll lose everything." I looked at him. At this man who'd been my whole world. Who'd made me believe I was nothing without him. Who'd hurt me in ways that would take years to heal. "You already lost everything," I said. "You just didn't notice until tonight." The cruisers pulled up. Red and blue lights washed over the porch. 2 deputies and a state trooper got out, hands on their weapons. "Chase Hamilton," one of them said, "you're under arrest for violation of a restraining order, tampering with a monitoring device, and attempted." Chase didn't run. Didn't fight. Just stood there, shoulders slumped, while they read him his rights and cuffed him for the second time in a month. As they led him to the cruiser, he looked back at me. His eyes were wet. His face was old. "I loved you," he said. "No," I said. "You owned me. There's a difference." The cruiser door slammed. The lights kept flashing. And I stood on the porch of Vinny Stone's ranch, barefoot, pregnant, and absolutely unafraid. Vinny appeared beside me. He didn't say anything. Just stood there, a solid presence at my shoulder. 15 minutes, I said. "You were right about the response time." "I usually am." "Don't get smug." "Wouldn't dream of it." The cruisers pulled away. The sirens faded. The night settled back into silence. "Are you okay?" Vinny asked. I thought about it. Really thought. And realized that for the first time in 2 years, the answer was yes. "Not yet," I said. "But I'm getting there." The trial began on a Tuesday in early October. The Mercy Springs County Courthouse had never seen so many people. They spilled out of the double doors, down the marble steps, onto the sidewalk where the news vans were parked 3 deep. Linda from the post office had saved seats for half the town. Mrs. Potts was in the front row, knitting a tiny baby blanket in pale yellow yarn. Deputy Raines sat in the back, his uniform pressed, his glasses spotless for once. Chase Hamilton sat at the defendant's table in an off-the-rack suit that didn't quite fit. No cufflinks. His lawyer had probably told him to leave them at home. His hands kept drifting to his wrists anyway, muscle memory searching for the gold monogram squares that weren't there. Angela Cruz had prepped me for 3 days straight. We'd gone over every question, every piece of evidence, every possible trap the defense might spring. She'd made me practice my testimony until my voice went hoarse, until the words lost their meaning and became something mechanical. But standing in front of the courtroom door, waiting for the bailiff to call my name, the words didn't feel mechanical anymore. They felt like a bomb I was about to drop. "You ready?" Angela asked. "No." "Good. The ones who think they're ready are usually lying." She straightened my jacket. "Remember, slow answers. Pause before you speak. And if he tries to rattle you, just look at Mrs. Potts." "Why Mrs. Potts?" "Because she's knitting. And nothing says I'm not afraid of you like an old lady knitting in the front row." The bailiff opened the door. "The court calls Jolene Harper to the stand." The room hushed as I walked down the aisle. I felt every eye on me. The neighbors. The reporters. The strangers who'd driven in from other towns to watch the spectacle. And Chase. His eyes burned into the side of my face like cigarette butts. I took the oath. Sat down. Adjusted the microphone. Angela approached the witness stand. Ms. Harper, can you tell the court how long you were married to the defendant? 5 years. Together for 7. And during that time, did Mr. Hamilton ever physically harm you? Yes. How often? I paused. The courtroom was so quiet I could hear the fluorescent lights buzzing. At least twice a month for the last 2 years. Sometimes more. Can you describe the first time? He'd had a bad day at work. A deal fell through. I burned the steak I was making for dinner. He threw the plate against the wall and then I stopped. Swallowed. Found Mrs. Potts in the crowd. Her needles were clicking. Clicking. He grabbed me by the hair and put my face through the bathroom mirror. And what did you tell people when they asked about the cuts? I said I tripped. I said I was clumsy. I said all the things women like me are supposed to say. Angela moved through the timeline methodically. The second time. The 5th. The night he broke 2 of my ribs and told the ER doctor I'd fallen down the stairs. The night he locked me in the basement for 6 hours because I'd talked too long to a male cashier at the grocery store. With every answer, I watched the jury's faces change. Discomfort. Horror. Fury. One woman in the back row was crying. A man in the front kept clenching and unclenching his fists. Then Angela got to the poker game. On the night of June 14th, did something unusual happen? Chase came home late. Very late. He'd been drinking. He told me he'd lost a lot of money. More than we had. More than we'd ever have. I took a breath. Then he told me he'd found a way to pay it back. What did he say? He said he'd put me up as collateral. That a man named Vinny Stone had accepted. That I was supposed to, my voice cracked. I let it. That I was supposed to go with Mr. Stone and do whatever he wanted. Objection, the defense lawyer barked. Hearsay. Overruled, Judge Holloway said. She was a thin woman with steel gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. The witness may continue. Angela stepped closer. And what happened next? Mr. Stone came to my house. But not to collect me. He came to stop my husband. He broke down the door while Chase was. I looked directly at the jury. While Chase was trying to break my jaw. The courtroom erupted. Judge Holloway banged her gavel. Order. Order in this court. When the noise died down, Angela asked, Ms. Harper, are you pregnant? Yes. Who is the father? Chase. And did he know about the pregnancy? No. I hid it from him. I was afraid of what he'd do if he found out. Why were you afraid? Because the last time I told him something he didn't want to hear, he put my head through the bathroom mirror. Angela nodded. No further questions. The defense lawyer stood. He was a slick-haired man from Dallas who'd probably defended a dozen men just like Chase. He adjusted his tie and approached the stand with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Ms. Harper, you've told this court some very dramatic stories. But isn't it true that you never filed a single police report? I was afraid. Afraid? Or were you simply building a story? A story that would help you take control of your husband's very lucrative business? Chase's business was built on fraud. He was broke. The forensic audit proved that. But you didn't know that at the time, did you? You just wanted his money. I looked at him. Then at Chase. Then at Mrs. Potts, whose needles had stopped clicking. I wanted to survive, I said. I wanted my baby to survive. Money was the last thing on my mind. Isn't it true that you're now living with Vinny Stone? A known associate of organized crime? I'm staying at his ranch. He's been protecting me from your client. Protecting you? Or coaching you? Feeding you this story so you could destroy Mr. Hamilton and Mr. Stone could take over his business interests? I leaned forward. Mr. Stone doesn't need my help to destroy anyone. And he certainly doesn't need your client's business interests. He has his own. Then why is he involved? Because when my husband offered me as payment for a gambling debt, Mr. Stone decided I was worth more than the money. The defense lawyer paused. He hadn't expected that answer. Worth more? What does that mean? It means he saw a woman who needed help, and he helped her. Something nobody else in this town was willing to do. The lawyer tried a different angle. Ms. Harper, you mentioned bruises and broken ribs. But isn't it true that you've always been accident-prone? I stared at him. Accident-prone? Clumsy. Unsteady. Perhaps even prone to exaggeration. Let me ask you something, I said. How many times would a woman need to accidentally walk into a door before you started to wonder? Objection, he snapped. She's asking the questions. I'm asking a question too. The same one this whole town should have asked 2 years ago. Judge Holloway leaned forward. The witness will answer the questions, not ask them. But I'd advise the defense to move on. The lawyer retreated. He asked a few more questions, weak ones, trying to poke holes in my timeline, my memory, my credibility. But the jury wasn't looking at him anymore. They were looking at me. No further questions. I stepped down from the stand. My legs were shaking. My hands were cold. But I'd done it. I'd said everything. As I walked back down the aisle, Mrs. Potts caught my eye. She didn't speak. Just held up her knitting. The baby blanket was almost finished. Pale yellow. Soft as hope. The trial lasted 3 more days. Vinny testified. Calm. Precise. Unshakable. He described the poker game, the offer, the moment he decided to intervene. When the defense tried to paint him as a criminal, he simply said, I've done things I'm not proud of. But I've never sold a human being. That was your client. Deputy Raines testified. His voice shook, but he got through it. He admitted he'd ignored reports. Admitted he'd failed. Admitted he'd let friendship override his duty. I'm not proud of who I was, he said. But I'm trying to be someone different now. Mrs. Potts testified. She brought her notebook. She read the dates. The descriptions. The calls she'd made and the calls that had been ignored. When the defense asked why she'd kept such detailed records, she said, because I knew this day would come. And I wanted to be ready. On the 4th day, the prosecution played the recording. It was a phone call. Vinny's people had pulled it from Chase's office line, a bug they'd placed weeks before the arrest. The prosecutor had fought to get it admitted, and the judge had finally allowed it. Play the recording, Judge Holloway said. The courtroom speakers crackled. Then Chase's voice filled the room. I'm telling you, Frank, the woman is losing her mind. She's been making up stories about me. Abuse. Violence. All of it lies. She's just trying to get my money. Frank's voice, tinny and distant, so what are you gonna do? I'm gonna discredit her. By the time I'm done, she'll look like a crazy gold digger and I'll walk out of that courtroom a free man. Then I'm gonna take her for everything she's got. That diner. The ranch. All of it. Bold plan. Bold plans are what I do, Frank. You know what my secret is? Confidence. Women like Jolene, they need a man to tell them what to do. Without me, she's nothing. She's always been nothing. You know what I always say, a wife is like a good suit. Looks great on your arm, but if it stops fitting, you get rid of it. The courtroom was dead silent. Then Chase's voice continued, casual as anything, anyway, enough about her. You still want in on that Henderson property? I can get you a sweet deal, but you gotta move fast. And Frank? We're your lucky boxers. This one's a sure thing. Someone in the back row snorted. Then someone else. Then the whole courtroom was laughing. Not the laughter of amusement. The laughter of contempt. The sound of a man's reputation crumbling to dust. Chase's lawyer put his head in his hands. Judge Holloway banged her gavel, but even she was struggling to keep a straight face. Order. The recording ended. The prosecution rested. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours. Guilty on all counts. Fraud. Embezzlement. Domestic assault. Violation of a restraining order. Tampering with a monitoring device. The sentencing hearing was held a week later. Judge Holloway looked at Chase over the top of her glasses and said, "Mr. Hamilton, you have shown no remorse. You have taken no responsibility. You have blamed everyone but yourself for the wreckage you've created. This court sentences you to 15 years in state prison." Chase's knees buckled. He would have fallen if the bailiff hadn't caught him. "You'll also surrender all remaining assets to Ms. Harper as part of the divorce settlement, including the office building on Main Street, the development lots, and the Hamilton family home." Chase looked at me. His face was gray. His eyes were empty. "I hope you're happy," he whispered. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. The verdict had said everything. As the bailiffs led him away, Mrs. Potts stood up. She held up her knitting. The baby blanket was finished. She shook it out, let the whole courtroom see, and said, "This is for the child. Not for you." The courtroom doors closed behind Chase with a sound like a vault locking. 6 months later, the diner opened. I called it second chance. Grandma would have approved. The sign was new, but the door still stuck, hip shimmy to the left, and the counter was the same cracked red vinyl I'd grown up behind. The grill was hot. The coffee was fresh. The meatloaf was exactly the way she'd taught me. The whole town showed up for the grand opening. Linda from the post office brought flowers. Bill from the hardware store brought a new set of spatulas. Deputy Raines came in uniform, ordered the breakfast special, and left a tip so big I tried to give it back. "It's not charity," he said. "It's an apology. I'm going to keep paying it until I believe I've earned it. That might take a while. I've got time." Mrs. Potts claimed the corner booth as her permanent station. She set up her knitting basket and her thermos of coffee and informed me she'd be holding court there every Tuesday and Thursday. "People need a place to gossip," she said. "Might as well be somewhere with good pie." I hired 3 kids from the high school to bus tables and wash dishes. I hired a line cook named Hector who'd lost his last job when the factory closed. I hired a single mom named Denise to manage the counter because she reminded me of myself 3 years ago, and I wanted to give her the chance I'd never had. The diner hummed. It breathed. It was alive again. Vinny came by most evenings. He'd sit at the counter, drink black coffee from a chipped mug, and watch me work. He never said much. He didn't have to. One night, after the last customer left and the grill was cold and the chairs were up on the tables, he was still there. "You're still here," I said. "I'm still here." That's becoming a habit. That 2-second pause. Maybe. I poured myself a cup of coffee and sat down beside him. The diner was quiet. The neon sign outside flickered once, twice, then steadied. "Angela called today," I said. Chase's appeal was denied. He's going to serve the full 15. Good. The prosecutor's office is also looking into some of his old business partners. People who helped him cook the books. Might be more arrests. That's also good. And the Henderson property he talked about on that recording? The one Frank was supposed to wear his lucky boxers for? Turns out it was a Superfund site. Contaminated soil. Nobody's building anything there for a decade. Vinny smiled. It was the real smile, the rare one, the one that softened the gray eyes and made him look 10 years younger. Poetic. I thought so. We sat in silence for a while. The clock ticked. The neon hummed. I'm going to be a father figure, Vinny said suddenly. He wasn't looking at me. He was staring at the counter. I'm sorry? The baby. Your daughter. He paused. I know I'm not her father. I know we're not. I know you're not obligated to let me be anything. But I want to be something. A figure. A presence. Someone she can count on. I reached over and took his hand. The one with the scar. You already are. He looked at me. I am? Vinny. You kicked down a door for me. You taught me how to fight. You stood beside me while I rebuilt my life. You've been there every single day since the night we met. You're not a figure. You're family. He didn't answer. He didn't have to. I leaned over and kissed him on the cheek. It wasn't a passionate kiss. It wasn't a declaration. It was a promise. Small. Quiet. Real. If I asked you to stay, I said, would you? That 2-second pause. Then, I've been staying since the night I met you. You just didn't notice. 1 year later, I was sitting on the diner porch. The baby, Charlotte, named after my grandmother, was asleep in my arms. She had my eyes and a shock of dark hair that made Marta cluck and say she'd grow up to be trouble. The sun was setting. The neon sign flickered on. The air smelled like burgers and fresh-cut grass and the jasmine that grew wild along the fence. Vinny was in the parking lot, teaching one of the high school kids how to change a tire. He'd taken on 3 more veterans since last year, men who needed work and purpose and someone who understood what they'd been through. The ranch was becoming something new. A refuge. A second chance for people who'd stopped believing in second chances. A car pulled up. A tourist, out-of-state plates. The woman rolled down her window and looked at the diner with the skepticism of someone who'd been burned by roadside food before. Excuse me, she said. Is this place any good? I smiled. Ma'am, this is the best diner in 3 counties. My grandmother opened it in 1962, and I've been running it for the past year. Everything's homemade. The meatloaf will change your life. Are you the owner? I looked at the diner. At the flickering sign. At Vinny, covered in grease, patiently explaining lug nuts to a teenager. At Charlotte, warm and heavy in my arms. It's mine, I said. All of it. The tourist nodded, parked, and went inside. Charlotte stirred. Made a small sound. I rocked her gently, humming the gospel song my grandmother used to hum when she was closing up for the night. Vinny finished with the tire and walked over. He was wiping his hands on a rag, and there was a smudge of grease on his forehead. He looked happy. Not the guarded, controlled version of happy he'd been when I met him. The real thing. She asleep? He asked. Finally. She's been fighting it all afternoon. Stubborn. Like her mother. I prefer determined. You would. He sat down on the porch step beside me. The wood creaked under his weight. The sun dipped lower. The first stars came out. Do you ever think about the night we met? I asked. Every day. Do you regret it? Getting involved? That 2-second pause. No. I regret I didn't get involved sooner. I regret I let him hurt you for 2 years before I knew you existed. But I don't regret a single thing that happened after. I leaned my head against his shoulder. It was the most natural thing in the world. We made it, I said. We did. Not perfect. No. Not perfect. He looked at the diner. The parking lot. The town beyond. But good enough. I smiled. Yeah. Good enough. Charlotte yawned. Her tiny fingers curled around my thumb. The neon sign buzzed. The crickets started their evening song. And I sat there on the porch of my grandmother's diner, holding my daughter, leaning against the man who'd kicked down a door and changed everything. I thought about the woman I used to be. The one who flinched. The one who apologized for existing. The one who'd believed love meant enduring pain. She was still in there somewhere. A shadow. A scar. A reminder of what I'd survived. But she wasn't in charge anymore. I was. And I wasn't going anywhere. The diner door opened. The tourist came out, wiping her mouth with a napkin. "You were right about the meatloaf," she called. "Best I've ever had." "Come back anytime," I said. She waved, got in her car, and drove off. The taillights disappeared around the bend. Vinny stood. Held out his hand. "Ready to go home?" I took it. Home. The word felt different now. It didn't mean the house where Chase had hurt me. It didn't mean the silent rooms and the locked doors and the bruises hidden under long sleeves. It meant this. The diner. The ranch. The man with the scarred palm and the gray eyes. The baby girl who would never know what it felt like to flinch. It meant second chances. Real ones. Hard-won and imperfect and absolutely worth fighting for. I walked inside with Charlotte in my arms and Vinny at my side. The diner was warm. The grill was cold but the coffee was still hot. Mrs. Potts had left her knitting on the counter, another blanket, this one in deep blue, with a note that said for when she outgrows the yellow. I locked the door. Turned off the lights. Stood for a moment in the dark, listening to the hum of the refrigerator and the distant bark of a dog. Then I went home. And I didn't look back. Underscore 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 underscore. The Mercy Springs Gazette ran the story on the front page the next morning. The headline read, "Local Diner Named Best in County." Below it, a smaller piece about the final dismissal of Chase Hamilton's appeal. Mrs. Potts clipped both articles and pinned them to the diner bulletin board. Right next to the menu. Right next to the photograph of my grandmother standing in front of the same counter, in the same apron, with the same smile. Linda from the post office came in for lunch. Bill from the hardware store stopped by for pie. Deputy Raines ordered the meatloaf and left another enormous tip. And the town kept turning. The way small towns do. Slowly. Stubbornly. Imperfectly. But something had shifted. People looked at me differently now. Not with pity. Not with guilt. With respect. With the quiet acknowledgement that I'd done something hard and survived it. A few of them even started talking about their own stories. The ones they'd hidden. The bruises they'd covered. The apologies they'd accepted when they should have called the police. It wasn't a revolution. It was just a conversation. A slow, halting, awkward conversation that might, someday, make things better for someone else. And that was enough. That was more than enough. On Sunday, I took Charlotte to church for the first time. We sat in the back row. Vinny sat beside me, looking uncomfortable in a jacket and tie, but present. Pastor Jim gave a sermon about forgiveness and justice and the difference between the two. After the service, Mrs. Patterson, my old English teacher, stopped me in the aisle. "I owe you an apology," she said. "For what?" "For seeing the bruises and not saying anything. For believing his version of the story. For being afraid to get involved." She took a shaky breath. "I'm sorry." "Thank you," I said. "That means more than you know." She nodded. Then she looked at Charlotte and smiled. "She's beautiful. She has your eyes. She has my grandmother's stubbornness too. At least according to Marta. Marta would know." We walked out into the sunlight. The church bells were ringing. The town square was full of families and couples and old men playing chess on the benches. Vinny took my hand. Publicly. Deliberately. The first time he'd ever done that. People are going to talk, I said. Let them. They're going to say I traded one dangerous man for another. He looked at me. Are you happy? Yes. Then what does it matter what they say? I squeezed his hand. It doesn't. We walked across the square to the diner. The sign was already lit. Hector was inside, prepping for the lunch rush. Denise was wiping down the counter. The high school kids were setting out the silverware. I unlocked the door, hip shimmy to the left, and stepped inside. The smell of coffee and bacon and fresh bread wrapped around me like a hug. I put on my apron. Tied it tight. Looked at the photograph of my grandmother on the wall. We did it, Grandma, I whispered. We really did it. Then I fired up the grill and got to work. Because that's what you do. You survive. You heal. You rebuild. And when life knocks you down again, and it will, it always does, you get back up. Not because you have to. Because you know you can.